Perhaps let's start with the regulatory hurdles. You know, we hear so much about how we are going to see a flurry of consolidation in the industry as a response to Obamacare, more patients, smaller margins. They need to consolidate. But what is the government going to actually say about the country's 5 biggest health insurers tying up? How confident, let's start with you, Les, perhaps, are you that these deals are actually going to get past antitrust authorities?
I would say that the first one is more likely to be successful than subsequent deals. So I think that's why Aetna went first. You're right that competition is being reduced, and obviously that's something that people don't like their HMOs to begin with, and now they're getting bigger and more powerful. And I think particularly in something like Medicare, which is Humana's specialty, you might see some pushback, but ultimately I think this deal goes through. I would be less confident about subsequent deals because for the very reason that there's less competition.
Zach, what do you think? I mean, Humana is now going to be the #1 provider of Medicare. How big do you think the regulatory risk is?
That's right. I mean, one way that the regulators can address this sort of concern is by requiring companies like Humana to divest businesses in individual markets. So when Humana bought a company called Arcadian in 2012, they had to go and sell off some of their business in Virginia, for example.
What do you think is the next most likely deal?
Well, we've heard a lot about Anthem and Cigna tying up, so that's something that we're definitely watching out for.
Do you have to raise the price?
Probably. I mean, because, you know, now the scarcity value. There's one less HMO to buy.
Yeah, but initially what they did was they came out and they just reiterated the price and went public with it.
Yes.
Does this deal over the weekend incentivize them to raise the price?
It does if Anthem wants to buy Cigna, although it appears that Cigna doesn't really want to be bought. So there's that, you know, dynamic at play.
Zach, what do you think about some of the prices for these deals? I mean, we have seen a huge move higher in a lot of the big health insurance stocks over the course of the year. I believe Cigna was up, what, more than 50% year to date? And still, this is a pretty punchy premium.
That's right. Yeah, it's a big premium. And you can see, you know, if you look at these stocks, I mean, you know, Cigna's up, Humana's up, and clearly investors are looking for them to be taken out. So that does put some pressure on Cigna's management.
Les, you think Anthem's overpaying?
Not if they want to get scale. I mean, ultimately, we wind up with, you know, of 3 or 4 major HMOs. And if you want to be a player, you have to have scale. But that said, you know, overpaying is a question you can't answer until 5 years after a deal anyway.
All right, fair enough. We should point out that Humana actually lowered their profit forecast earlier this morning. Les, you own some of United Healthcare, correct? United Healthcare could still technically come in here and blow up the Aetna Humana deal. Would you like to see them do that? How likely do you think that is?
I think you had mentioned competition. I think that a United Humana deal would just be too much for regulators to swallow, just because, you know, United is #2, would be #2 post this deal in HMOs and Medicare. They're #1 now, so I just don't see that as a likely. I do see United being an acquirer, though.
Yeah, and on the screen, just for viewers, what we're showing is just how many subscribers these 5 big health insurers in the U.S. have. This is, again, a tie-up between the 5 biggest players. Zach, do you agree with what Les is saying?
Yeah, I mean, you know, United is really in a tough spot. They're huge. On the other hand, they don't need to do a deal, again, because, like Les was saying, they're just so big. You know, 50 million plus members. What do they need to add another 10 million more for?
All right, so just final question. Aetna and Humana, perhaps, of course, are both saying that this is actually going to produce lower prices for consumers. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's fair?
In the 40 years I've been tracking health insurance, there's never been lower prices.
There's no cost deflation.
So I don't see that. It's lower relative to some imaginary number. There's no cost control. Premiums are going to go up next year.
So is this bad for consumers?
It's bad if you get sick. But no, in general, I'd say price inflation over the last, say, 7 or 8 years has been more moderate than it was in the preceding decade. So I would say it has more to do with economic factors than anything that the HMOs can do.